Welcome to the Chief of the North. This is Thursday, not Monday. Well, actually, it's Friday. Good Lord, it's been a week. I'm Seth Kaiser, the Chief of the North, and we're here on RGR Football. And I owe you all an apology. We didn't have our usual Monday mornings with the Chief of the North, and we're a little late on the mailbag. Unfortunately for me, I had a couple trials this week, and there was just nothing I could do about it. Sometimes that takes up all your time and attention. And of course, it would happen in a week when the Chiefs win the AFC Championship, get themselves to the Super Bowl for the third time in 5 years, beat the Bengals. It was just a great week to be a Chiefs fan, guys. There's a lot of injury concerns floating around right now that undoubtedly people are going to ask about. The Chiefs have been pretty tight-lipped about all of them. We're going to probably see the Chiefs desperately needed that bye week. And to be fair, the Eagles have some banged-up players too. We've got the Andy Reid Bowl, the Nick Sirianni, who, used to work in Kansas City. The Kelsey Bowl. There's all sorts of stuff going on. It's going to be awesome. What we try to do here every week, we try to do some mailbag questions. I tweeted out asking for some. There was also, I think, at least one from last week, so we're going to cover those. And it's a Super Bowl mailbag edition. I couldn't be happier. This is going to be a great time. And you guys responded with a ton of questions. Before we get going, one thing I want to let everyone know, if you're not already a subscriber to the Chief of the North newsletter, there is a Chief of the North Super Bowl bound sale that you can check out. You can find it on my Twitter feed. It's $6 a year forever. If you decide that's something that you want to do, you go ahead and find that there on Twitter. Also, after we're going to get to all your mailbag questions, what we're going to try. Make sure to do all the YouTube stuff. Make sure to hit like, subscribe, support the good work that Ryan and company are doing here. I also work here, but they're the ones doing good work. So make sure you do all those things because it matters more than you think. All right. We have a lot of mailbag questions because you guys are awesome. Normally, I would have on Monday gone through what I thought were some of the biggest issues, some of the biggest storylines on how the Chiefs beat the Bengals. If you want to check out some of the stuff I wrote at the Chief of the North newsletter, I've written a couple of film reviews on Chris Jones's big day, and then Marquez Valdez-Scantling and the way that he managed to punish the Bengals for playing some single high and actually kind of play the role of wide receiver one at certain points. That one's a lot of fun, I think, and I think a lot of you would enjoy it, so go check that out. But let's mailbag. There's so many questions. You guys are crazy, and I appreciate it. Let's start with Grayson Neely asked in last week's, and you get priority. Remember, if you want to submit mailbag questions in the comment section below, try to put a question mark in front or behind it. Those will get priority, and then I'll put out a tweet every Wednesday to try to do some mailbag questions, and we'll go from there. Which position do you think Veach will trade for before the 2023 NFL draft? I think if Veach is going to trade for a position before the draft, it feels to me like tackle is the most likely. The problem is it's really tough to find a tackle in the NFL who's both good and available for trade. It's one of the reasons the Chiefs jumped at the opportunity to grab Orlando Brown. They knew he wasn't a top 5 tackle, but they also knew that it's hard to get a competent left tackle who's a veteran without having to, sell the farm. But that is the direction I think he'd be most likely to go because it's easier to trust veteran offensive linemen as opposed to, everything that you get in the draft, the mystery box, as it were. Although, again, and I've been pretty firm on this, Brown has played well in the playoffs. I really trust Andy Heck to develop offensive linemen. Now, obviously, Lucas Niang hasn't developed quite like they'd like, but at the same time, injuries have gotten in the way there. So I'm curious if they decide to go that route in terms of bringing in a rookie. For left tackle. That's a route I would very seriously consider if I were them. Don't mind my emails going off in the background. That's another thing that happens when you're in trial. All right. Brendan asks, what is behind the disdain for the Chiefs, especially from national media? Did Clark offend them? Lamar, Carl, Veach? I don't think the Chiefs really get that much national disdain. I think really what we saw leading up to the AFC Championship, which is I think where the onus of this question, I think the Bengals were, they went to the Super Bowl last year. They beat the Chiefs last year. They beat the Chiefs twice last year. They beat them this year. They had just pounded the Bills. They were the new thing. And Chiefs fans need to remember, it wasn't that long ago that the Chiefs were the new thing. In 2018, 2019, they were the new thing. And that's how sports works. You work, get to the top. You start getting all these accolades as you become the new thing. And then after a year or two, people want to talk about a new thing. And that makes sense, honestly. And so you're going to see more and more of that the longer the Chiefs keep up the level of success that they're having. They have been the most successful franchise in the league over the last 5 years. You're going to continue to see the, pundits and especially at the national level. You can't just talk about the same thing over and over. So they're going to look for new stories and new things. Mortis asks, how do you feel about cutting Hardman? Personally, I think it's time to let him go. How likely are we to keep Juju or MVS? Well, McCole Hardman, Andy Reid basically came out and said that Hardman's probably not going to be able to play in the Super Bowl, which is really unfortunate for him in a contract year. And it's unfortunate for the Chiefs because he adds value to their offense. So it won't be a matter of cutting him. It's a matter that he's going to be a free agent and he'll have a chance to test the market. I think with the injuries this year, I'm curious if he ends up not getting quite the market he wants and trying to come back to Kansas City on a 1-year deal. If that happens, great. He has some value to the offense. He can do a lot of the things that they really like doing in terms of some of the replacement for a traditional run game. He can occasionally threaten teams down the field. He's gotten more and more comfortable with Mahomes. There's some stuff that he does really well that really adds value to the team for the right price. And you can talk about Kadarius Toney being a replacement for most of those things, if not all. But the problem is Toney can't stay healthy, and that's been a real problem throughout his career. In terms of keeping Juju or MVS, I think MVS is a shoo-in to be around next year. I thought that before the AFC Championship. I think with Juju Smith-Schuster, I think it depends on the price. There's a few free agents that are interesting. It's not a great wide receiver free agent class, but so that I think that means there's a chance that Smith-Schuster could get offered a really big contract on the open market. And I hesitate with that because although he's played well for the Chiefs this year, there are continued injury concerns with him. And that's a little problematic. That knee has been troublesome for him for years. It's been troublesome for him at times this year as well. So I that would be a price point issue with Juju Smith-Schuster. There's also a little bit of overlap between his skill set and Sky Moore's. Not saying Moore is remotely ready to take his place for that, but eventually you got to see if the rookie can do it. Matt Ungashik asks, which imaginary Wednesday injury report did at practice do you believe would be the most impactful if you could ensure his health for the Super Bowl? I'm trying to remember all the did not practice guys. Did Kelsey practice? I think Kelsey practiced. I think L'Jarius Sneed would probably be the most impactful. The Bengals have a bunch of weapons, or the Bengals. See, we're already still there. The Eagles have a bunch of weapons. Eagles, Bengals, it sounds a lot alike. The Eagles have a bunch of weapons. Sneed is him and McDuffie are like this as their best cover corners, although I think McDuffie's starting to pass in there. But Sneed also has a whole other skill set that McDuffie's still working on. And having two guys like that as opposed to just one guy is an incredible boon for the defense. Mighty Mickey asks, has Orlando played himself into a next contract with the Chiefs? If not, do they place the franchise transition tag? I think they franchise tag him in all likelihood. He has played well down the stretch. But there's a consistency issue there, and that's a problem if you're going to try to pay a guy top-tier tackle money. Bass on Bassoon Fun asks, do the Chiefs play Hurts like they play Ravens Jackson, meaning you beat them by throwing the ball? Play the run, contain the QB. We need Sneed back. Yes, they need Sneed back. It's a little more complicated than that in how you play someone like Jackson, who throws the ball well. He doesn't. It's not as varied in it as like a Mahomes, but almost no one is. I think Jalen Hurts is a better passer than Lamar Jackson, but. And the Eagles definitely have way better weapons. And so that makes it a lot tougher to just play the run because you have guys that can consistently win one-on-one. And so I think you really have to deal with a really varied run game. And it does start with that with the Eagles, but your corners are going to need to have a terrific day as well. You're going to need to be able to win some of those one-on-one matchups. And that's almost impossible to do with A.J. Brown. And it's tough to do with Devontae Smith, too. And they got a real good tight end and Goddard. I mean, they're just a tough offense to deal with. The Chiefs need their defense to be fully healthy, and they need an incredible day from their edges, not just in pass rushing, but in run defense. and that interior is going to need to hold up. Some of the things the Eagles do, they just blow guys off the ball, and the linebackers. Really, everyone is going to I just basically naming every single defensive aspect. The linebackers, especially, they're going to have a tough time. The Eagles are really great at climbing guys at the second level. Jason Kelsey's a stud. So it's really not quite as simple as just playing Hurts. That entire system is built so well. Skulls228 asks, with Juju looking to be a free agent, how would we feel about a wide receiver group of MVS, Sky, Tony, John Ross, and maybe another going into next year? I would not feel incredible about that. No. And so they need to continue to infuse talent into that. I'm on record of saying I think the Chiefs should take a wide receiver in the third round or higher every year during the Patrick Mahomes era. You can never have too many wide receivers simply because the offense is built for it. You can have 3 or 4 wide receivers on the field at one time. It automatically allows you to build on that in a way you can't build on a lot of other positions. John Wesley asks, as someone who knows ball, I see your Times Ours listener, dunking on Nate and Josh for not picking the Chiefs was maybe the most fun that I've had doing this job in the last year. As someone who knows ball, do you think Spags opts to blitz the Eagles' read option look, seen as the 49ers stayed back and paid for it with better defensive personnel? That's a good way of framing it. The Eagles are such a well-built team. I think that given the way that Nick Bolton especially succeeds, and Willie Gay as well, as a run defender, I do think the Chiefs are best off sending their linebackers on essentially run blitzes pretty consistently. And you're going to have to build some good kind of zone blitzes behind that and zone coverage behind that. I think that's their best shot. I'm going to be looking at that more this next week in the Chief of the North newsletter. Brendan Downey asked, in the Jags game and several others, Chiefs linebackers seem to get washed out of their assignments easily. Is this a product of scheme or execution by either team? Eagles run game will pick on this, which is why I ask. I think that is probably the biggest concern that I have heading into this game, is that at times both Nick Bolton and Willie Gay Jr. have struggled getting washed out at the second level by good climbing offensive linemen, and the Eagles have great ones. So it's definitely a concern. Willie Gay Jr. takes on blockers better than Nick Bolton does, even though Bolton's a stronger player. Willie Gay Jr.'s got better length and athleticism, and he's just generally able to shed blocks a little bit better. But neither of them, that's not really their specialty, and that's one reason why I think you're better off moving them forward and then understanding that that's what you're doing, and Justin Reed's going to have a heck of a game covering the middle of the field. Howard Smith asks, what mix of pass and run will give the Chiefs their best chance to win? I'm going to take the coward's answer and say it depends. It just depends on what looks the Eagles are giving them. The Eagles have a great defensive line, and they've got guys who can get after the passer as well as defend the run really well. Adding some of the guys, they've had Linval Joseph. That was a low-key great addition because he plays the run so well, and it allows them to do a bunch of things around him. So it's going to depend on the looks that they show. They didn't have any luck running the ball against the Bengals, and that's something that they're going to need to know whether or not they can do early. Theorist says, since all the talk is about the rigged NFL, through your time reviewing film, has there been anything that made you wonder about it being rigged while watching players? Absolutely not. No. The NFL consists of 1,500 players, give or take, and then you've got like another 500 floating around. In and out of practice squads and stuff. The difficulty in rigging something like that, you would need every single player to do it in order to make it happen. So it's either all the players or none of the players, because otherwise, rigging it with a player just doesn't work. Now, you want to talk about officials and that kind of stuff. I guess you could argue that. Never, I'm going to butcher this quote, but never attribute to maliciousness what can be chalked up for as incompetency. Generally speaking, we tend to read in too much when people make mistakes. Like, oh, that was on purpose. Probably just made a mistake. Mark Wells asked, what's one player this offseason you want the Chiefs to target that could be a significant upgrade? This could be by signing or trading. I'm curious what the Cardinals want for DeAndre Hopkins. And I know. However, He's only got 2 years left of his contract. And the Cardinals, because the way contracts are structured, have eaten a fair amount of the money. So it'd be a lot cheaper for the Chiefs than it would be for the Cardinals. It'd be interesting because, if you're already the amount he would cost if he doesn't want a new contract, the amount he would cost would be the same as what Juju Smith-Schuster would require on a year by year. And it would be a shorter commitment. And DeAndre Hopkins was better this year when he was playing. Now he's older, so you never know when that drop-off is going to come. But it's an interesting idea to me. You draft a receiver in the second or third round. You trade maybe a little something for Hopkins, and you continue to just rotate right through the talent in that room. I kind of like that idea, but that's just me. I'm always pro trading for good veterans. Jiffy asks, what part of the Chiefs versus Eagles matchup makes you confident the Chiefs will win? What makes you the most concerned the Eagles will win? I'll start in reverse. The most concerned really is that run game against the Chiefs linebackers. I'm very concerned about that. They're deep, they're varied, they're explosive. They play it so excellently. The Chiefs secondary has been pretty solid. I'm not as worried about them, but I'm really, really worried about that run game against the Chiefs linebackers. The most confident that the Chiefs will win is Patrick Mahomes against a defense that has struggled against high-level quarterbacks this year. They rush the passer really well. Overall, I mean, they led the league in sacks by a country mile. They also played a bunch of pretty crappy offenses. Now, on paper, their defensive line is terrifying. I might write about this. There's been some inconsistency in how they played against really good offenses versus more mediocre offenses. They've been able to overwhelm mediocre offenses with their talent. And when they can't do that, things have gone just a little bit differently. Nathan V 2.0 asked about the Orlando Brown contract situation. Like I said, I think they're probably going to end up tagging him. I don't see after the year he's had them paying him top money, and I don't see him accepting anything else. So I'm guessing it's a tag. Brad Lemon asks, if Philly has the best O-line, they run so much, why have they given up so many sacks? Just because my assumption would be, and I could be wrong here, I don't know exactly how those sacks are tallied, but Hurts is a running quarterback. He can do a lot more than that, but he does try to keep plays alive. He tries to run around a little bit, so you're going to probably end up with more sacks than otherwise. They're also their interior. Jason Kelce is excellent. Dickerson's solid when he's in. Their interior isn't quite as dominant as their tackles, in my opinion. It's just my opinion. Jason Kelce aside, of course. Please don't yell at me, Jason Kelce. Anyway, I think that's part of it, but I haven't really, just for the record, I haven't really dove into the film on that. That's an estimate. That's a guess. Hurts tries to keep plays alive, and then you also had Gardner Minshew doing some stuff for a bit there too. Ken Tack asked, my main question, although McColl most likely missed the Super Bowl, what do you think the others that are injured? I'm thinking, look, it's the Super Bowl. If guys are remotely able to play, they'll play. And that bye week, I think, should give them time to get right. So I think most of those guys you're going to see play. What I'm worried about is Tony. It's in the past, it's taken him a while to get right, so we'll see. Carnivore by birth, aren't we all? Forward-facing eyes, right? Asks, which needs would you try to fill first in the upcoming draft? Tackle and defensive line. I think the Chiefs need to keep loading up talent on that side of the ball. They've done a great job restocking the secondary. They're going to want to continue to look at that. But defensive line especially, they need to continue to infuse talent. You can see the difference it makes when the Chiefs can surround Chris Jones with competency. It makes a huge difference. And when you've got a guy to build around like Chris Jones, you just need competent bodies around him, and you can have a really good pass rush. And that's what the Chiefs have looked like at times this year. Jeremy McVeigh asks, how does the Eagles defense compare to the Bengals? I'm not going to call them the Bungles. That's mean. The Bengals, what can we expect the Chiefs offense to run against it? I haven't taken a ton of looks at the Eagles defense. So I want to be careful not to answer a question that I'm not really qualified. I would say, though, just on the surface level with the stuff that I've seen, they are they're built a little bit differently. They're less scheme oriented, more talent oriented. They are built very, very much front to back. They're not as reliant on mixing up coverages as the Bengals at least appear to be. And they rely more on winning up front. And so I think if I were a betting man, I think you're going to see the Chiefs handle their defense because they move straight ahead so much. They really are attacking with that defensive line. I think, and again, I need to watch more of the Eagles to have a really good opinion on this, but I think you're going to see the Chiefs maybe handle them similarly to some of the ways they handled the San Francisco defense with some misdirection stuff, some stuff to try to really mess with Hassan Riddick's mind, kind of have him not knowing, where to go, what direction to go, jet sweep straight towards him, that kind of stuff, because that really slows down a pass rusher. Tyler asks, will Philly's pass rush attack be able to have success against a team led by the godfather of the run-pass option of the NFL? What extremely mobile quarterback with an average arm has had winning success against KC with Andy Reid? I think that underestimates Hurts quite a bit in terms of who he is. He is an extremely mobile QB, and maybe his arm isn't incredible, but it's not. I don't even know if I'd call it average. And because he's such a sharp player, average arm, that I don't think that tells the whole story with him. And I don't think you can really take anything from what other quarterbacks have done. I don't think you take what other quarterbacks have done and try to extrapolate that necessarily to Hurts, because his situation is so unique and they've built that team around him so well. Z-Man asks, is there an Orlando Brown deal to be made that both fans in Orlando would accept? Probably not. No, not at this point, I don't think. Kevin L. asks, considering how insistent you are on a Chris Jones trade, you guys got to stop. People are tagging Chris Jones. Now, it's only happened a few times. The man is going to think I want him traded. And I'm just, gosh. Anyway, what would be fair compensation? 2 third rounders. That's really funny. Chris Jones is a cornerstone player. You can't trade a guy like that in most circumstances. The only circumstances, so like Tyreek Hill, cornerstone player. However, the Chiefs were starting to get backed into a little bit of a financial bind. Not a huge one, but enough of one. Also, you've got an equalizer in Patrick Mahomes on the offensive side of the ball. And there's maybe some other stuff going on there in terms of whether, he'll want to be in Miami, all that, whatever. It depends on who you listen to. Jones is different. There's no equalizer in Mahomes. They are in a much better situation than they were. And that's one thing. It's like, okay, well, hey, it worked really well with Tyreek. That's true. 100%. That doesn't mean that you do it literally every time. It doesn't mean they should trade Travis Kelce, right? It doesn't mean that they should trade Chris Jones. And, Justin Reed's played really well this year. Who else isn't on a rookie contract? Well, L'Jarius Sneed's about to not be. Let's trade him. And just all draft picks everywhere. It's like, well, Seth, that's a slippery slope logical fallacy. Sort of, but it's made to point out that each situation should be approached on its own merits. So with Chris Jones, you have to approach it from the viewpoint of it is after the Tyreek Hill trade, which means that their asset accumulation is much better than it was. It means their salary cap situation is much better than it was. It's not as necessary as it was. And so for Chris Jones, for me to even pick up the phone, a team would have to be offering 2 first rounders. And that would just be to pick up the phone and be like, where are you in the draft again? And, oh, that's not very high. I'll see you later. And even if they were higher picks, I don't know. Chris Jones is one of maybe 5 to 10 players in the NFL you can build a defense around. That matters a great deal. So it would take it would take an insane amount for me to even consider it. All right, we are coming up on more than enough time here. There is one more question here from Uncle Glenny. Glenn, always good to hear from you, buddy. I hope you're enjoying Philly week here. Reddick has a crazy speed rush. Both our tackles struggle terribly with speed, guys. Any thoughts? Yeah, I'm worried. Reddick does have a great speed rush. Generally speaking, that's been problematic for both of them. Although Wiley struggled with some power guys. I mean, he's just had an up and down year. I think they're going to help out a lot with Reddick, and I think they're going to be real cautious with exactly how they approach their approach with him. He's a really dangerous player. I think they're going to consistently line him up against Wiley and see if they can just win that one-on-one matchup repeatedly. I think the way that you deal with him, and this is what we'll kind of close on, is, again, if you look at how they played the Niners when they played Nick Bosa, some of the things that they did to slow him down and kind of remove him from the game, I think you're going to see some of that stuff with Reddick as well. I think you're going to see some jet sweeps run in his direction. I think you're going to see some option type stuff done his direction. I think you're going to see some draws his direction. I think they're going to try a number of things to cause him to not know where the blocks are coming from and what direction the ball is going, and causing that split second hesitation can take a player completely out of the game. That's my best guess at this point. I'll be writing, like I said, I still have the Patrick Mahomes AFC Championship film to review to do. Man, isn't that fun to say? And then I'll be moving on to kind of taking a look at some things that I would look at in terms of the Chiefs Eagles Super Bowl matchup. Man, Super Bowl again. Life is good. It's a great week to be a Chiefs fan. Thanks for watching, you guys. I appreciate you again. Hit like, subscribe, all that stuff. Check out the special for Chief of the North newsletter. If someone knows where to find it, feel free to drop it in the link in the comments section. I appreciate you guys watching. Like I said, it's a great week to be a Chiefs fan. And you know what? We should probably do this again next week. Yeah, let's do that.